Alrighty then, so I'm just going to speak briefly on point number 2, so just reminding everybody about using dewormers appropriately. And I'm just going to talk about factors to consider. We went over most of them this morning. Also, what about dewormer? So, should we ever be administering 2 dewormers at the same time? And our goals for this section is we want to avoid any sort of treatment failure, and we also want to avoid the development of anthelmintic resistance. So there's about 11 points to consider prior to treating. The first one we learned about this morning, byproducts with a drug identification number. Make sure you're getting what you're paying for. Read the label, follow the instructions, dose correctly. If it's product that's not labeled for sheep or goats, get the proper dose and withdrawal times from your vet. Laura talked about this morning about calibrating your drench gun or automatic syringe correctly. Make sure the air bubbles are out. Make sure it's actually delivering. If you want to deliver 5 mils, make sure test it out a couple times. Make sure it's delivering 5 mils. Also remember that the wear and tear on the drench gun, sometimes some of the threads can become worn and you might be losing dewormer through that. So always make sure everything's in good working order. Weigh the sheep and goats, dose for the heaviest in the group. And again, like Laura said, by group we mean a similar group of animals. So lambs and kids, or yearlings, or rams, or mature ewes and does. And again, goats are generally treated at twice the dose for Safeguard or Valbazin, and then 1.5 times the sheep dose for ivermectin and levamisole. If anthelmintic resistance is suspected, don't double the recommended dose. It's better to treat twice, 12 hours apart, specifically for benzimidazole, so that's Safeguard, Valbazin. There's also some work out of the UK and that says maybe you could even do this with ivermectin, so Ivomec. Use the correct route of administration. Don't use cattle poron products as porons or drenches. You want to use the drench as the drench is the best way to go. Again, drenches are also preferred over injectable products. Sorry. And you want to make sure you drench correctly by placing the entire dose over the base of the tongue at the back of the throat. So they're getting the entire dose. They're not spitting any up, which would result in underdosing. You also want to make sure it's going into the rumen and then slowly released through the rest of the intestinal system. Again, holding sheep off feed 12 to 24 hours. I like to give a range because some people get really nervous, like if I can't do it 12 hours, is 15 okay? So you have that range there. This is done with the benzimidazoles. Again, it increases that amount of time that the drug is passed slowly through the digestive tract. So, should we be rotating dewormer classes, and how often should we be doing this? So the current consensus, and again, this information changes as research finds more things out, but the current consensus is you don't want to rotate classes, so all those drugs that are in one class versus a drug in another class. So I always like to use Ivomec and fenbendazole, or Ivomec and Safeguard. Consensus is you don't want to do that more than once a year, that you want to rotate those drugs. If you do it rapidly, so you treat with multiple drugs in a year, it can lead to multiple class anthelmintic resistance. On the other hand, we have people who use the same dewormer for 10, 15 years. That probably also speeds up or it enhances the anthelmintic resistance too. So there's kind of a fine balance. And the research is always evolving. So hopefully this is what is the standard, but you never know what's going to happen in a few years. Now, should we be giving 2 dewormers at the same time? And again, it's not, and you don't mix 2 dewormers in the same syringe. This is talking about you give one and then you give another one right afterwards. You should only be doing that if you have anthelmintic resistance diagnosed in your herd or flock. Only if it's prescribed by your herd or flock veterinarian, and it's only going to temporarily improve the situation. Eventually you're going to see resistance after using that method too. Oh, I already said that. All right, so I'm right at my review question already. No? I know Anita talks a lot and Paula talks a lot, so I try to keep myself, short in between.
Paula, we'll take that as a compliment.
Okay, so my question.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I have questions.
There's no question, just a comment.
Oh, sorry. Is there any questions? Yeah, I see. Okay, I see this one and then the one in the back. Hang on.
2 years ago, I worked for the Ministry of Livestock Medicine Inspections. We had somebody peddling American, it was pour-on cattle ivermectin, but the point was, it turned out to be half the dose. People didn't figure that out until it didn't kill the lice, and then they really looked at the bottles. Also, it was in a clear container. Ivermectin products have to be in a opaque container in a box because they can't handle sunlight. Also, they didn't have all the ingredients in it because when they do the bathtub ivermectin in the United States, according to the Marial veterinarian, you just have to tell the American government what the active ingredient is, and anything else you happen to have in there is okay. And expiry dating, they don't have to do that, or any other kind of information. So it's buyer beware. It was half the price, and it worked half as well.
Alrighty then. Comment or question at the back there?
Yes. When you discussed switching the classes of worm medicine, I didn't quite understand why you were saying it should be no more frequent than a 12-month period. I didn't understand that. I would have thought it would work the other way, like the reverse of that.
Okay, so the question was, why not rotate more frequently than once a year? Is that the question?
If you, let's assume you're worming twice a year.
Okay.
I'm taking what you said to mean don't switch types in the second worming.
Correct. And so that's just so, again, you're not exposing those parasites to a different, now I should just back up a minute. What I'm talking about is that if you do that repeatedly, okay, you do that for 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a row, you have now probably started to establish anthelmintic resistance in both products because you've exposed those parasites to products that work in a different way. So they become resistant to both those products. Instead of using it judiciously, and we're going to talk about targeted selective treatment and the whole thing about refugia, you're leaving resistant parasites to both products now in the environment. So that's why you'd rather, you want to expose them at different times so that they don't get used to one product or they don't get used to both products. Is that fair enough? Maybe not?
I understood what you said. There's not the time for me to understand the reality of it, but I understood what you said. Yeah.
Okay. We can talk about it afterwards too if you want. Yeah?
It's a little confusing to me when you talk about developing the resistance. You said that if you use the same type of disease, same type of medicine for, let's say, 10 years, you risk developing resistance. On the other hand, you said that if you switch too frequently and on 2 different times, you risk developing resistance. Now, what my question is, when you talk about developing resistance, I would have always thought that that worm that's suffering the effects of the medicine is then said, oh, I know what that is, and then it's resistant to it. So that really, the resistance is caused by the actual medication, right?
Right.
And so it seems to me that if that's the case, then what you've said about whether you use one type or the other type isn't really going to have an effect on the result, because really my feeling is that it's like, I'm not expressing this very well, but if you spray for bugs, that bug will mutate into another kind of bug. And it will say, oh, I know what that is. I'm gonna be now resistant to that. So the danger and the risk is doing it at all.
Right, and so the comment is about resistance
Yeah.
and how frequently they're exposed to it. And so that is part of the big picture, is that every time you expose a bacteria, a parasite to a product,
Yes.
they will start to, over time, develop resistance. This isn't something that you're going to treat for the first time today, and then next year you're going to have resistance. But again, the other key is, just like if you're spraying for flies, that product kills flies in a certain way. If you then jump to a different product that doesn't kill in the same way, you don't develop resistance right away to that. They're acting on two different parts of the bug, so that the resistance is a little bit, it's slowed down because you're not hammering them. And part of this is also that we were treating repeatedly in each year, and we weren't thinking about pasture management, or we weren't doing everything else. And so that's has a lot to do with this resistance topic. And the same as changing the dewormer class and who do we deworm. So that's why we're trying to really, get you guys to all think about a much bigger picture, and it's not just about picking up the dewormer, it's about many, many other things too, so that we don't develop this resistance over time. Is that better? Okay. Okay, so I have one question here. And, oh, sorry. Nope, that's not mine. That's not mine.
Are you kidding me?
This is mine.
You only have one?
I only
look at
have
that. Perfect.
Which of the following statements is or are false? Dewormer classes should be rotated every 6 to 8 months. Dose sheep and goats to the average weight in the group. Treat sheep and goats a year. Sheep and goats should be treated with cattle poron products. Or all of those statements are false. Is there one that's false, or are they all false? Very good. They're all false. Yay. All right.
I'll have to teach Anita how to ask a question.